Hi, I'm Loretta Bush, President and CEO for Authority Health. Now, I just recently became aware, maybe about a year ago, that November is National Family Caregivers Month. And this year, the theme is caregiving around the clock, which is just amazing because I think most of you will agree that it is an understatement to say that caregiving is a tough job. Like so many other people around the country, we want to honor the people who are lovingly giving baths, cleaning houses, shopping for, feeding, and comforting the millions of elderly and ill people. Those people represent our friends, our family members, and our loved ones. Now, here to help me do that honoring and acknowledgement of our caregivers is Dr. Geneva Williams. Many of you know her for her successful career in nonprofit management. And she excelled in that area, I think, for like 4 decades. Now, she may not look like it, but she was doing that for 4 decades and just excelling and showing many of us the way. Since then, she has opened her own company, Dr. Geneva Speaks. She is living a vibrant life and teaching other women over 50 to do the same. She's publishing books, she's reporting podcasts, she's creating online courses and mentoring corporate Gen X women. This is a busy woman. Others of you may know her as a devoted wife, mother, and sister friend. The role I asked her to talk about today is her role as caregiver to her beloved husband. Welcome, Dr. Geneva.
How are you, Loretta? And thank you so much for having me. And shout out to all the caregivers.
All right. Dr. Geneva, why don't you start off by just setting the stage that led to your caregiving journey?
Oh, yes, because that brings back so many memories. It hasn't really been that long ago, but I think it started with my mom, who was hundreds and hundreds of miles away from me because she was in New Jersey, I was in Detroit, and she got very sick, and we had to make arrangements for that constantly. So I was always on the phone and going back and forth to New Jersey and worrying and feeling so guilty. Yeah. And then my sister was able to come from where she lived and stayed with her. But it still continued because folk were calling me and asking me. So I really felt like I was in two different places at the same time. And then shortly after my mom got sick, we found out my husband had cancer. Wow. And so that was his journey with that. And, that was a tough one. And then my mom died, and shortly thereafter, my husband died, and we were married for 40 years. So that was, wow, devastating. And then my father got sick and died. So within about an 18-month period, the people who were the closest to me passed, but that 18 months was really stretched to about 4 years of caregiving.
Wow. So talk to us about some of the things that we hear about. And I know that at some point you're gonna want to talk to us about some of the tips that you may have found to stay healthy yourself. And why don't we start right there? What were some of the things that you found that helped you to live in that moment, give care? I'm trying to think, that's probably a time that you were building your company, still working, right. Maybe have still been, sort of in the sandwich generation, because I know that you have children, maybe not small, but we're forever parenting, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're in that midst of probably shepherding young adults, and also on the other side, and that's caring for a husband and a mom. Mm-hmm. So what were some of the things that that you found that were helpful? And then what are some of the things that you wish you had have known then?
Mm. Well, one of the things, when I think about it, I wish I had known was, I wish I had known that I was in a fog because I didn't realize. I mean, it was almost like a robot. I mean, I get up, take care of somebody else, take care of somebody else, go to bed. And I
Mhm.
mean, it was just like that constantly. And that really became an issue that I didn't recognize until I was way in it. And that was becoming stressed. I mean,
Yeah.
I was overwhelmed, worried all the time. And in fact, in this high straight a state of what they call, which I didn't find out till later, but when I went to the doctors, adrenaline fatigue. And that's when
Oh,
you're always on in that fight or flight mode.
right.
You're
Yes.
constantly, there's never a release. And
Right.
so it was a constant, and that creates a fatigue in your body, and then that's how you get stressed and these unhealthy behaviors. Sometimes I would binge eat, and then sometimes I would not eat at all, and then
Right.
sometimes I couldn't sleep, and then sometimes I'd find myself falling asleep during the day. And it wasn't until almost after I got through it that I realized that I had been so stressed out.
Yes.
And so that, I think, is one of the things that we as caregivers, we really faced. And so what I wish I had known before was that you can get lost in the act of giving care, and
Right.
that you've got to come out of it. You got to pull yourself out, kick yourself out, scream yourself out of it, and take care of yourself. Because I think the first best step in taking care of someone is taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. I've
So,
heard you talk about that, right? We
yeah,
have to have a full cup, as full as we can have
yes,
it, to be able to then pour out, right? We are able to
right,
help people with the overflow. An empty
right.
cup doesn't help anyone, including ourselves.
That's right. That's right.
Did you get a chance to have any experience with any of like the adult daycare or asking people to come in and help? I've been looking at some of
Yeah.
the tips that they give. Now that I'm aware of National Caregivers, I
Mhm.
wanted to know as much about it as I could. So they talked about that sometimes people either they don't know about adult daycare where we can drop a loved one off where and go and get some respite care, or about things like what did I just mention, Geneva? Oh, it's just gone right
Well,
out. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the respite care, the
Yes.
daycare, yes. And I
Yes.
think you mentioning that is so important because it's one of the tips that I want to share, and that is get help. I
Yes.
mean, build a support team and get help.
Yep.
And so for my mom, and who's way on the other side of the country, we got someone to come in, and
Okay.
that was a big thing because my parents were both so independent,
Yes.
and someone coming in the house and taking care of them, you had to do it. But we had to do it. We just
Right.
had to. So even going through that process, that negotiation process, was stressful.
Well,
But once it happened, that gave such relief to my dad, who saw himself as, I got to take care of my woman. They were married for 60 some years.
oh my God. Yeah.
And so he had to take care of his woman. But then we needed to have someone to come in to take care of not only my mom, but him as well, to give
Right.
him a break. And I think that that's the second tip. I think building a support team and getting help allows you to take a break. So I know that was great for my sister. But then when I was taking care of my husband, I did the same thing. So I reached out to various agencies and would get someone to come in once in a while. And then once he was in hospice, because I did hospice at home, So
Yeah.
when the doctors told us he was nearing the end, I brought him home.
Yes.
And so I had someone who would come in, every day, to help, bathe and clean and
Yes.
all of that. And I find myself many times still there in the house, but the fact that just having that relief,
Yes.
is a big deal. And I think caregivers so often feel that, they shouldn't do that, or they feel guilty about doing that, but you got to do that.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Loretta, I'll share that I discovered during that time was that you got to tell people what you're doing, that
Okay.
you are caring for. So if you're working, you need to tell your employer. Or if you have your own business, you need to tell your employees or the people who work with you. You need
Sure.
to tell your neighbors. You need to let other people know your situation. Now, that doesn't mean that you tell all your business. I'm
All
not
your business.
suggesting that. I'm not
Right.
suggesting that. But I
Right.
am saying that you let people in on the fact that you're a caregiver.
Dr. Geneva, why don't you share some more tips about how people can cope when they're in the moment and still kind of do some self-care?
Yeah, I think that telling people what your situation is so important. I'll never forget when a neighbor of mine remarked to me. She saw me scurrying about one day, and she said to me, "You okay?" And I'm not talking about telling people all your business, but
Right.
I did say to her, I'm okay. I'm taking care of my husband who has cancer. And I just told her, and her response to me was just, I'll never forget it. Because she said, "Oh," she said, "thanks for sharing." She said, "I know you're probably going through some things, and if you ever need help, just call me and I'll be there." And
Yes.
that just provided such a relief for me. It was amazing because people can show you empathy and they
Yes.
can listen, and you need that
You
at
need
this
it.
time when you're a caregiver,
Right.
and they kind of understand. So people won't know if you don't tell them. So I think sharing it,
Yep.
letting people know. So if you're running your own company, that you let your employees know.
Yep.
You let your employer know, you let your church family know.
Yeah.
And just make sure people know. So that telling it and setting up a support team. The other thing, um, Otha's, my husband, his buddies used to always calling into his golf buddies and the people he laughed with and drank with, were
Yeah.
always calling, how's he doing, the whole thing. So I would answer those calls, except then after a while, I said, you know what? I need to ask them. So I began, every time they called, I would ask them to do something.
Yeah.
I'd create it. Sometimes it would be, well, can you just come tomorrow? Can you come by for about an hour and be with Otha? Every single time they loved it. So
Yeah.
I started asking them to take him to the hospital because he was going on a almost everyday basis to get the radiation or the chemo or something. I mean, they knew us at the hospital and in the
Right.
emergency room. They knew who we were. So
Yep.
I would ask them to do that. I would ask them, to do the rides. I would ask them, hey, can you go get us something to, eat or whatever.
Sure.
They would love it. And
Yeah.
so, asking people for help, building that support mechanism, rather than being, and, as we as women, we wear the cape and the,
That's
gloves
right. The
and
cape, the
I mean, we
boots,
do everything,
everything.
we
Yes.
super,
Right.
we got to
Yep.
be super.
Yep.
And it doesn't work,
Right.
Loretta. It just doesn't work because it means that while we may think on a short-term basis that we're doing all this wonderful stuff for the person we love and taking care of,
Right.
we're eating the poison, we're drinking the poison, we're not
Drinking the
taking care of
poison.
ourselves. And
Right.
so our cup ain't full and
Right.
it doesn't work. So doing that. And then just another piece I just want to, I think, and I know people are going to think this is crazy. How can you say this during this time when you're caregiving? But I think it's an important time
Yeah.
to set personal goals for yourself. I
Okay.
really do. I
Yep.
mean, I
That's
really
important for
do.
people to hear.
Absolutely, because what it does is it says to you, hey, I'm still here. I'm still
Yes.
living. I want to, I need to continue with my life. My life matters.
Yes.
And you set those goals. Now, that doesn't take away anything from who you're caring for, but what
Right.
it does is and then it helps you focus on you for a minute. And so for you to really think about your life, think about your goals, it's just an important time to do
Yes.
that. And most times we won't do it, or we won't think, oh, I can't do that now, but
Yeah.
this is the time to do it.
Well, I hope our listeners, when they hear you say that, I hope that that's given them permission to do that, because
Yes.
you have really unpacked so many of the issues. Early on, you started talking about the guilt that people can
Mhm.
feel,
Mhm.
because when a loved one is going through a difficult health issue and maybe proceeding to death, if you continue to try to have a piece of life or have to go to work, there can be guilt. And what you
Yes.
just said hopefully will help to free people of that. You
Mhm.
have to take some time to still live life, set goals,
Right.
go to work, do those other things. And
Mhm.
that is just so freeing. And then you talked about telling people. And again, certainly in certain cultures, we really get into, I'm not going to tell people my business. Folks
Right.
don't need to know your business. And early on when I was working in HIV, one of the things people taught me, they said, your
Mhm.
secrets will kill you. And
Yes.
sometimes if you just tell somebody,
Mhm.
they will
Mhm.
gladly help
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
carry the load.
Mhm.
And the example you gave, when people are calling sincere friends and saying, how's he doing, and how can I help? They really want to know,
Mhm.
how can I
Mhm.
help? And
Mhm.
it helped you and Otha, but it also helped them because they loved him, they cared about him,
Absolutely.
right? And
Mhm.
the helplessness that other people feel
Mhm.
when their dear friend is going through something. So to give
Right.
them assignments, meaningful assignments, that
Exactly.
also helped you as well. You
Yes.
touched on so many of the points that during this month, all of the tips that are being shared about learning to cope. It talks about taking care of your own health. You touched
Mhm.
on that.
Right.
It talks about accepting help from others. So I'm
Mhm.
really glad that you
Mhm.
spoke on that, because that is one of the keys that they give us. And also, one of the things that you haven't talked much about yet,
Mhm.
it says you have to learn how to speak effectively with doctors. Was that part of
Oh
your
my
experience as
goodness.
well?
Oh, yes, and and that's what I call a two-sided thing. One, you need to hear and you need to listen to what they're saying, so that you become very well versed in the medical terms, what the situation is. You ask questions, etc. And then the other side of it is taking personal responsibility to do that, and to understand that, yes, hey, them doctors, they've been to school, they read the books, and they do all that, but you are responsible for your own personal health
Yes.
and your loved ones. And
Yes.
so they oftentimes can't articulate, they can't speak up, they can't do whatever. So you have to do that too. And
Yes.
in doing that, question and know that it's your loved one's body and what's happening with them, and you want to get the best information possible. So you know I think, working with medical professionals, it's interesting. I have a very, very dear friend who just over the past couple of days went through, she had breast cancer. And so she
Okay.
went through and she had to have the massive reconstruction, the whole bit.
Wow.
And one of the things she talked about, which was what I found out as a caregiver, was she was so, she could go into her surgery with this level of confidence because she knew and trusted her caregiving professionals, the
Yes.
healthcare professionals.
Yes.
And so it was funny because when she was talking, she says, she said, I think I have a good team. And I asked her, I said, well, why do you feel that way and how'd you get to that? And the thing that she talked about the most was she had candid conversations with them. She asked questions. She did her own research. So they would say something that she'd run and she'd Google and look it up, etc. So that she became as much an expert about her body and what she was going through that she could. And so for caregivers, that's something that's another role, another thing that we have to do. We have to understand what the medical condition is. We have to understand what the health status is of our loved ones so that we can question and advocate and become an expert. And you know what else, Loretta?
What's that?
At this time, while we're learning and becoming so familiar with the disease or the health condition of our loved ones, it also gives us the opportunity and the push to make sure that our own health is in order.
That's
okay?
Right. Yeah.
So while we're doing all this investigating and making sure we know and understand every little word that the doctor says, because I found out more about bladder cancer than I ever thought I would know, okay? Because that's my husband had it. And so, I had to understand the terms, et cetera. But at the same time, I also said to myself, I don't want to get this. Let me check out what my health, did I go to did I get the screen and what am I eating?
That's exactly right.
So it's,
so it also can lead to some more self-awareness in your own health journey and everything.
Absolutely.
You talked very well about part of that caregiving role is also that of advocate, right?
Yes.
Having another set of ears and being able to advocate, even if the person we're caring for can still, speak and everything, but they're going through something and having that ability to just advocate for them and be another set of eyes and ears. I found over the years, Geneva, that the most success I've seen in many health situations is when the patient and the provider, the doctor are working in partnership. And that the person does not just turn over all of their power, but that they are an active participant in their own living, their own healing. And then, if they're at the end, how they reach the end of their life. Well, I tell you, we have covered so much. I want to give you an opportunity in case there's something that we have not touched on. For those who may have just joined us, I'm Loretta Bush from Authority Health. I'm speaking to Dr. Geneva Williams from Dr. Geneva Speaks. Today, she's talking about her past role as caregiver to her husband and to her mother. We are talking about the importance of mental health and physical health. So I do want to invite you, if you are looking for a primary caregiver or if you need behavioral health services, please consider us at the Popoff Family Health Center. You can reach us at 313-824-1000. Dr. Geneva, are there some closing thoughts that you have around this topic?
Well, I just want to say, first of all, and again, let me give a shout out to all the work that you and Authority Health do. You really make a difference in the health outcomes for people living in our area. And I appreciate you and your leadership and your fabulous team.
Thank you.
I guess what I would say during this time of caregivers, shout out to all of you, we love
Yes.
you, is, two things. One, recognize that when you step into the role of caregiver, that it probably is a new life for you. I mean,
Yeah.
it's new, it's different. And so
Mhm.
you're going through a transition and it's okay. It's okay to, have those anxiety feelings and the overwhelm and the guilty and all those kinds of things because you're experiencing something new and different. And so that part's okay. What the challenge is and what we want you really to do is focus on how to cope with that, how to
How to
deal
cope.
with that, and
Right.
again, the transition and it's a new life. And then the last thing I would leave is you are probably as a caregiver doing your very best. And so thank you. You are, you're at your best, you're doing your best. I know it probably doesn't seem like it when you're in the thick of it,
Yeah.
but you are. You really are. And so give yourself the credit, pat yourself on the back, love yourself like you love your loved one.
Wow. Thank you so much for joining me. And just by
Thank
way
you.
of a reminder, November is National
Yes.
Family Caregivers Month. The theme is caregiving around the clock. And we've been talking about all of those ways to cope. But most of all, we just want you to know that we appreciate you. And
Yes,
as Dr. Geneva just said, you're doing the very best you can.
absolutely.
We appreciate all that you do, not only this month, but all throughout the year.
Yes.
We just keep the faith and keep doing what
Yes.
you do. All right. Bye
And
now.
Loretta,
Yes.
no, I just wanted to say, and also a shout out to my sister
Okay.
who was a caregiver, but now is a healthcare worker too, all
Okay.
through COVID. And she has taken, and I really get to see what courage and leadership is and doing for others is through her. And so she, like so many other caregivers, I just love them to death.
Yes, and that's a topic that I was thinking about trying to touch on, and that is this whole caregiving in the face of COVID. That just
Yes.
really has us all trying to double down. So a special
Yeah.
shout out to all the caregivers,
Yes.
especially at all times, and especially during this COVID season. So as always, knowledge is power, and
Mhm.
stay safe out there.